Hey class, welcome to this week's chapter, Examining the World of Work. So hopefully you guys have watched the two videos before this one. Talks about gender biases and talks about, positive outlook, how you could practice that. So now we're kind of getting to the point where we took some interest profile queries. We looked at a bunch of different stuff. We examined between jobs and careers and the difference in salaries and all that stuff. So now we're examining the world of work. It's pretty self-explanatory, so let's go ahead and get through it. So we're going to be discussing determine and describe personal cultural factors influence your careers, examine how diversity affects the workforce, which is huge, define how changing workplace affects your career choice, recognize the roles and trends of your career fitness portfolio. I'm sorry, that's a huge one right now. In the middle of a pandemic, we're learning what jobs we were able to work during the pandemic, and what jobs had layoffs. And then analyzing job trend projections as well. You don't want to get into a job like let's say coal mining when we're moving away from those type of fossil fuels and stuff like that. So the first one is family support. So this could go, three different ways. Maybe one, your family really encourages you to go to college and they really pump you up and say, hey, college is important. We want you to go to college. We're going to help support you through this process. College, college, college. And then there might be the family to where, yeah, go to college or don't. Either way, we can support you, or maybe we can't support you, but we're not going to say don't go or to go. And then there's the last one where your family absolutely needs you. Maybe you can't afford for college. Maybe they see college as a negative. So you don't quite have that family support. So your family support might support you to go to college full time, which will build your academic confidence much faster and bring you closer to finishing your degree in a timely manner. Oh, my dog's getting comfortable. So that one's huge. And now she wants to go out. So I'll go ahead, pause this, and let her out. Or I'll just open the door. Zuma, what happened? Sorry, again, if you are a Chino High student, you'll be seeing that dog on campus. She will be our therapy dog, but I guess she wasn't tired anymore. All right, social influences on career choices. So social and cultural, that's a huge one. I would say one of the top tiers as far as picking your career choice. It's also going to control how your family, your friends, and yourself see something and kind of follow through with it. So I'll talk about my personal thing is when I decided I wanted to be a counselor. So I talked to my grandpa, who, keep in mind, he was in World War II and the Korean War. He's a manly man. And I remember I said, hey, Grandpa, I want to be a counselor. And he said, that's a woman's job. And I was stunned. I was like, oh okay. So obviously that's like a cultural thing growing up in his time era, and we'll talk about that in a bit. That was, a nurturing role that men just did not do, and it kind of portrays into even now in counseling. Another thing is you might not have time for school. Maybe you work full time. Maybe you're helping support a family. Maybe it's just not the right time for you. Maybe you're not mature enough, or whatever it might be. Man, she's really anxious right now. Okay. The next one is maybe you have younger siblings, or maybe you have a son or daughter yourself, and maybe you need to help support that child. As we know, that's a full-time job. So maybe you can't physically go to class, or maybe online classes are just not for you. Maybe you're having to work full-time to support the family. Again, if you're working 40 plus hours a week, do you have time to go to college? My answer is yes, I did it, but obviously maybe I had family support in other areas that other individuals might not have. I just didn't go to college full time when I was working full time. I was taking, two, maybe three classes per semester or quarter. Again, family support, that's a huge one. If your family or loved ones don't support you, um, it's hard to push through that sometimes. And another one is money to pay for college. And this one I kind of hold dear to myself. I didn't get any financial aid, which is essentially free money for my undergrad. So I got into about $30,000 in debt. I graduated. I worked. I was making pretty decent money for about 2 years, and I said, you know what? I'm going to go back to school. So I found a counseling program that was highly rated. The only thing is, instead of it being a 2-year program like many other programs, it was a 3-year program because it was such a large program that was academic and as far as mental health as well. So I went from not making much money to making pretty decent money to having to quit that job. So my income got slashed by, I don't know, 70%. So still didn't really get too much financial aid. I had to pull money out for college. So that cost me about another $30,000. So it was about $60,000 or so in debt. And for me to pay off my first $10,000 cost me about $20,000 because of this ugly thing called interest. Again, which means that because I borrowed money from a company, I have to pay it back, but I also have to pay it back and some depending on your interest rate. And we'll talk about interest and a few other things and finances in a different chapter, so I don't get too far off topic. But I had to get very serious, and eventually I was able to pay off my student loans. And every dollar I essentially had that wasn't going towards my mortgage or food was going towards my student loans. Take a quick sip. So here's some examples from the book that we'll go through. And these are real world examples. Back when I was a college counselor, I used to hear a lot of this. Sometimes even as a high school counselor, I'll hear this as well. I'm too old or perhaps too far along in school to start thinking about changing careers now. So what happens if you're junior or senior in college and you work towards English major, and also you decide you want to go to engineering, so you have to take additional science classes and additional math classes. It's going to slow you down. Well, I'm too far along, I'll just finish with English. But what a lot of people don't realize is if, engineering or whatever your major you're switching to is your true passion, yes, it might set you back a year or two, maybe 3 years. But in the grand scheme of things, if you're going to be working 40 to 50 years of your life, is that 2 to 3 years really going to slow you down? Probably not, especially if it's something that you're passionate about. And my thing is, you're never too old. I've worked with plenty of older people that went back to school and got their education or got their certificate program to switch careers. And my thing is, if it makes you happy, go ahead and do it. So I would really like to be an engineer, but I've given up because I can't go to school full time and get that kind of degree. As we know, a lot of engineering majors will spend 5 to 6 years in college because there's so much math and science and stuff like that. But at the same time, is a couple years really, really going to slow you down when you're going to be working 40 to 50 years? That's just my opinion. That's a long time. And you want to make sure you're doing something you're passionate about and something that you love. So I don't know whether I'm going to apply for a job or not, besides that I'm going to hire Latino. So that again is something that I was thinking about with my grandpa. He's a Latino himself. I'm half Hispanic. And again, he was in those two world wars, or World War II, and then also the Korean War. So, he kind of had that mindset, and it kind of, for a while, I was thinking about, like, is anyone going to hire me if I'm a male counselor? It's a little weird, right? But what we don't realize, a lot of time it's the opposite. And we'll go ahead and talk about that in a bit. I'm not really qualified to do this kind of job. My high school grades were weak. I was never good at schoolwork. That is me. I've told this class before, I almost didn't graduate high school. I didn't graduate 7th and 8th grade due to disciplinary and a few other things. I almost didn't graduate high school. My sophomore year, my highest grade was a D. Um, and I'm not even joking. I show a lot of my students my transcript. And so when I first started going to college, I thought, I'm not capable of going to college. I'm not smart enough. I'm not this, I'm not that. But the funny thing is I excelled in college. I always had at least a 3.2, if not, closer to a 4.0 all through college. It's not because I was dumb in high school. It's just that I looked at education through a different lens. But what I'm trying to say is because you weren't, great in one aspect of your academic career does not mean or correlate you're going to be the same moving into a different one. Again, when you get to go to college, you get to pick your professors. You get to pick the college you attend. You get to pick, what time you go. So if you're not a morning person, take night classes or afternoon classes or vice versa. You get to choose if you're going to do a fast track, which is 8 weeks or 16 weeks or 14 weeks. You get to pick the major you're going to be in. So you get all these choices. You get to customize college to your needs, opposed to other types of education. So my family needs me to work or help out with expenses. There's no way I could move away to go to college. So luckily for us, there's a lot of colleges that are really great around the area. So if you can't move to a different state, we just got to find one a little closer. And I'd be happy to talk to you guys about that. Sure, I'd like to go back to school, but how could I get the housework done? Who would look after the kids? There's no money for childcare. So this particular example, my coworker decided to go back and get his third master's. He looked into childcare. It was gonna be almost $2,000 a month for childcare. So what he ended up doing was going to an online school where he could still watch his children, put them to bed, and then do his kind of like what you guys are doing now. You guys could watch this any day of the week at pretty much any time. So maybe that's the route that's best for you. So we talked about Carol Dweck before and the growth mindset. Again, if we were in a typical in-person classroom, we'd break down into groups and really discuss how we could utilize growth mindset in these examples, but really just, thinking outside the box to allow yourself to achieve your goals and ambitions. So we're gonna do a tight little shift over here to gender roles. How do gender roles affect your decision making? Greatly, honestly, greatly. Again, if I listened to my grandpa and said, being a counselor is for females, I might not have become a counselor. I was talking to my buddy who is Filipino, and he says I have to become a nurse. It's like, well, what do you mean you have to become a nurse? He's like, no, in my family, I'd be considered a failure, and that's more of a cultural thing. But also with his gender, he's really being pushed for it. So you might think of a firefighter, for instance, or a handyman or a construction worker, or these things that we think, even for a long time, they're doctors. You think of these gender roles. So what are some jobs you associate with these gender types? Again, we break into groups and discuss these things, but we won't right now because it's only me and my dog in the room. All right, so equality. When we think of equality, we think of equal, right? Equal rights. So 40 years ago, female students seeking career advice from school counselors, wasn't me, I swear, were frequently encouraged to choose fields such as teaching or nursing. These choices were recommended both because they were women's jobs and because they fit best with the traditional female role of, being a mother, a caretaker, or something like that. So even when my mom grew up, college was not really for women back then. My mom actually got a full ride scholarship to Berkeley for her academics and tennis. Again, all 4 years would have been paid for. She would have moved out of the house. And my grandpa, again, loved him to death, but he was old school Hispanic, and he told my mom, college is for men. Can't go to college. And she's like, well, I could get it paid for. And he's like, no, you stay home. So she ended up going to beauty school, and she did pretty well for herself, but she even talks about it to this day, and it really bothers her that my grandpa did not let her go to Berkeley, which is, as we know, a really strong, amazing school. So equity. So again, So these are things that are written in law to help protect individuals. I think that's so powerful. People need to be protected, or society would just be crazy. So affirmative action programs, policies, and procedures that attempt to overcome and affect past discrimination, bias, and or stereotypes. Or pretty much what this is doing is, hey, we know there's some stereotypes way back when. Again, college is for men, or counseling is for males, or I mean females, or whatever it might be. But these programs and procedures and policies are to hopefully age those out to where, maybe not this generation, but the following generations won't know the difference. Like, oh, you want to be a nurse? That's cool for males or females. Or you want to be a counselor? That's cool for males or females. Or you want to be a construction worker? Cool, female, male, or whatever it might be. Ageism, any action or policy that discriminates on the basis of age, affecting employment. So this is, and we're going to talk about this later when we do our really good resumes together, but your future employer or current employer cannot ask for your age. That's against the law. And if they ever ask you during an interview, that's a red flag. That could be a lawsuit. Now, is there sneaky ways to get around this? Absolutely. Sometimes they'll put, what year did you graduate high school? Okay, well, you're probably 17 or 18, maybe 19 when you graduated high school. So we roughly know your age. Americans with Disabilities, amazing. Americans with Disabilities. So pretty much in this pretty recent, at least I think it's recent because I'm old, but in 2008, significantly expanded the definition of disability. As a result, more employers must offer reasonable accommodations to more workers with physical or mental impairments. So what would happen if I didn't have use of my legs? I was in a wheelchair, and the company I worked for didn't have an elevator. Obviously, that's a no-no. So the company would have to think of something for me, and they can't not hire me because of my disability. Again, that's a no-no, and that's going to be a lawsuit. Maybe it's work from home, maybe it's work at a satellite. And what satellite means is just a different location. That's something for you and the employer to discuss. I always think of how many people this affected before it was kind of written in the stone, right? Who knows how to, maybe hundreds of years, I don't know. Barriers. We think of barriers, we think of a wall, right? It's something to keep somebody in, or something that, or somebody in or someone out, right? Anything that prevents a person from equal access, the use of goods, services, facilities, and so on. So again, this might be the same thing: physical or textual barriers such as stairs. Some of those barriers could be stereotypes. When we think of sociology, and we think of glass ceilings for women, and we'll talk more about that later on, but something that's preventing you from achieving a higher pay raise or higher position or whatever it might be, that's outside of what you're doing. Now, if you're a bad worker, they decide not to give you a promotion, that's on you. But if you're a female and they decide not to give you a promotion, that's the only reason why. That would be considered a barrier, and that's a huge no-no. Discrimination, practice policies. And I want you guys to really think about these, because they're probably going to be on the quiz. I'll put the PowerPoint up so you guys go around. Again, my quizzes aren't to trick anybody. As you guys know by now, you get up to 2 times to take them. I take your highest score. So again, practice are policies, procedures. They're specifically prohibited by law the actions that limit or denies a person or a group of persons opportunities, privileges, roles, or rewards on such as prohibited basis of their sex, age, race, and so on. Again, that's discriminating. I don't like you. I'm not going to hire you because you're old, you're a female, you're a male, you are African American, you're Hispanic, you're whatever it might be. That's no go. You can see there's quite a bit of these. Gender bias, an attitude or behavior that reflects pretty much thinking that one group of people or another type of person is more superior. That's a no. Gender fair are practices and behaviors that treat males and females similar, may imply separate but equal. Again, if you're into social rights or social justice, especially if you read a lot of, Martin Luther King or um, I'm blanking on his name right now. It'll come back to me. You'll think about the Malcolm X. There you go. Well, you'll talk about these quite a bit. Gender roles, social behaviors are prescribed and defined for males and females according to the traditional, on contrast with actual biological differences. And you can even break these down into a household. And even in my current household, we're pretty guilty of them. It's probably because I've been doing them since I was younger. But I take out the trash cans, I cut the grass, but also I do laundry and I do dishes. So those are a little different. So again, there's just specific gender roles that society has told us to do when we might actually do daily, but we don't even think about it. So I won't go through all these because I know this lecture is getting a little bit more, but again, I want you to have access to the PowerPoints. That way, when you take your quiz, but I'll talk about non-traditional job real quick. Working in the field or occupation typically employs 75% or more of the opposite gender. Example, nursing is only 8% males. Construction workers only 2.5% females. And these are typically really good jobs to get into if you're passionate about it and you're the opposite sex. Because a lot of times you might get hired. I was a little worried about being a male counselor, and I quickly learned that a lot of employers are looking to hire males because there's so few of us. So again, sexism, any attitude, action, that it's really, you're going to look down at the opposite sex or feel that they're inferior for specific jobs, which is a no-no. So I don't know if you can see this, it might be a little blurry, but it has some occupations according to females. So only 24.5% of chiropractors are female. My chiropractor is actually female and she did an amazing job on my back. Dentists, 22% females. Aircraft pilots is less than 1%. Electricians, 1.5%. Mechanics, 4.2%. And I actually was talking to a mechanic that was a female last week. And she's a master tech, which is one of the highest you could be as far as certifications to be a mechanic. And she was like, yeah, some people just don't trust me with their cars. They think I don't know what I'm doing. And I've actually been doing this for 20 years. And, it's something to really think about for sure. This is older, but this is, this is almost 10 years old. But it's type of salary that you should expect. So if you are less than high school, let's see, where's the rates? All workers 815. So you can kind of see the median, as far as like wages you'll earn, which is kind of crazy. Also look at the unemployment rates. So a lot of times, if we look at the bottom three, you're going to be more likely to be unemployed than somebody with a specialist of some type of college. So something to consider. Education, again, I'm biased, I'm the first to admit it, but it's very important. Another thing we want to talk about is a global economy now. The world is a little over 24,000, I can't even think right now, 24,000 miles. That's why there's 24 hours in a day. But when we really break things down, it's not that big. I ordered a package from that's over 3,000 miles away in New York, and it came within a day and a half. So it's a global economy. You might order things from other countries and then they come pretty quickly, or even maybe the services you offer are online only and they just have to download it. So a decade ago, the United States was generating the most of the world's technology. To future has diminished. Global competition and pretty much what happened was it's cheaper to make technology in other countries. except because the United States, we have laws and regulations that protect employers. We have to pay them at least a minimal wage, where in other countries they might get 10 cents a day. So obviously it's much cheaper to produce these goods, which drove a lot of jobs away. And you probably learned about that watching the movie The Corporations. Also, it's really good to speak multiple languages. So if you don't know multiple language now, it's something to really consider. My mom never taught me Spanish, and it really hurts me to this day because there's so many people I could probably help more if I was able to communicate more effectively with them. My wife speaks 3 languages, so um, if you could learn a language or two, I highly recommend it. So again, this is just something right out of the book. It talks about, the medium wage, but this is a little old because it's 2012. But you can go ahead and pause the video and review it. And that's it. So again, I'll go ahead and put the PowerPoint up, and then just look out for the quiz. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. Quite a bit of students have contacted me already, which I appreciate. I'm really here just to support you guys as the best of my abilities. All right, guys, I'll see you on the next video.